I never imagined I'd be the kind of person to write one of these long, cathartic Reddit posts that end up on YouTube voiceovers or stitched into TikTok story times, but here we are. My name's Rachel. I'm 45 now, but this all began nearly a decade ago, when I turned 36 and did something incredibly risky. I left my secure job in accounting and opened a small business. Not just any business, my dream business. A boutique cafe/bookstore tucked into the older side of town in Lowell, Massachusetts. A place where I imagined warm lights, rainy windows, thick wooden bookshelves and the rich smell of espresso and cinnamon in the air. I called it Hemlock House, a name that confused some people at first, like the poison, but once they stepped inside, they got it. It was cozy, dark-toned, literary. We hosted open mic poetry readings, local writers' meetups, moody jazz nights, and indie author signings. I handpicked every book on those shelves, down to the obscure gothic novels nobody else carried. I learned to bake just to get our pastries right. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week for the first 2 years. I didn't date, didn't take vacations, didn't even leave town. And it paid off. Hemlock House developed a following. We weren't raking in millions, but people came every day. I knew the regulars by name. College kids curled up on mismatched couches doing homework, older couples played cards by the window, and new moms brought babies in slings for some peace and a cappuccino. It was real. It was mine. And then came Taylor. My younger sister. She was 4 years younger than me, and honestly, we'd never been that close. Growing up, she was always the pretty one, the social one, the Instagrammable one. She did PR for real estate developers, wore stilettos at brunch, and always seemed to have 10 new business opportunities going at once. We were cordial, but different worlds. She'd stop by Hemlock House every couple of months, order an oat milk latte, take a few aesthetic pics, and leave. She'd always say stuff like, "This place is so you, Ratch." A little witchy, a little nerdy, love it. She never offered to help. Never stayed for events. She didn't see it as a business, just a vibe. Then in early 2022, everything changed. I was diagnosed with lupus after months of fatigue, random fevers, and joint pain. When I finally collapsed during a supplier run and was hospitalized, they told me I had to slow down or risk permanent damage to my kidneys. I had no backup. No partner, no children, no co-owner. Just me and a handful of part-timers who couldn't run the place alone. That's when Taylor showed up. Perfect hair, perfect nails, fake concern. "Oh my God, Rachel," she said at the hospital, clutching my hand. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" I was exhausted. Frightened. Vulnerable in a way I hadn't been since our mother died. So when she said, "Let me help. Just while you recover. I can handle the logistics, keep it afloat, make sure the bills are paid," I agreed. I gave her limited power of attorney, just enough to manage the books and sign basic vendor agreements. We made a temporary arrangement. It was all verbal, because I was still under the impression that this was family. That this was my sister. She swooped in like a white knight. The staff were impressed. She brought in new lighting, hosted a few fancy-sounding events, branded our drinks. I was too weak to be involved, and she assured me, daily, that things were running smoothly and that she was just keeping the engine warm. I should have known something was wrong when I stopped getting financial reports. Or when the signage changed subtly on social media from Hemlock House, owned by Rachel, to just HH Collective. Or when I was released from the hospital after 8 weeks and she didn't show up. 2 weeks after I got out, I tried to stop by. I was wearing a hoodie, hair tied back, still gaunt from being sick. I didn't even recognize the front of the building. Gone were the dark wood panels and hand-painted sign. In their place was a sleek modern gold and glass logo, amber and ash. I thought I had the wrong building. But when I walked in, my breath caught. My antique bookshelves were still there, but painted over in pale gray. The rustic tile I'd chosen? Covered in a white epoxy. The book selection had been gutted, replaced with trendy hardcovers, celebrity memoirs, self-help manuals. The pastries were now imported from some sterile bakery in Boston. And the barista, one of the few I had trained myself, looked straight through me and said, "Hi. Welcome to Amber and Ash. First time here?" I said, quietly, "No." That's when Taylor emerged from the office. She was wearing an all-beige pantsuit and oversized sunglasses, Indoors, no less. Her expression froze when she saw me. Then she smiled like I was a surprise guest at a party she didn't invite. "Ratch," she said. "Wow. You're up and walking. That's great. You didn't text me." "I own this place," I said, louder than I meant. Her smile tightened. "Technically, no. I restructured the LLC 3 months ago. You weren't responsive and things needed to move forward. I kept it alive. I saved it." She gestured around like she was showcasing a goddamn condo. "It's doing great, by the way. I rebranded, streamlined the menu, focused on scalable aesthetic. People love it. You wouldn't believe the influencer engagement we're seeing." I was stunned. I think I stood there for a full minute in silence before I asked, "Where's my name? Where's Hemlock House?" She tilted her head, all faux compassion. "It was dated, Rachel. I know you don't want to hear that, but people want clean design, not dusty corners and moldy books." Then, as if offering a favor, she added, "But hey, if you want to run a story hour or something, you're great with that crowd." I left. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't burn it down. But something in me shifted. I had lost everything, everything I built. She took it in broad daylight and smiled while doing it. I didn't want to get it back. I wanted to outlive it. I wanted to bury her with elegance. And that's exactly what I began planning. You ever hear the phrase, "Revenge is a dish best served cold"? I used to think it was just edgy movie dialogue. But standing outside the shell of what was once Hemlock House, staring up at the clean, shallow facade of amber and ash, it settled into my bones like ice. Taylor had stolen the heartbeat of something I built from nothing. And worse, she was proud of it. Publicly. Loudly. In the weeks after that first confrontation, I did what everyone expected. I disappeared. I didn't rant online. I didn't show up at her new events. I didn't scream at the baristas or demand some dramatic showdown in the middle of the latte line. Instead, I moved like fog. Quiet. Thick. Unstoppable. First, I looked into what she'd really done. Taylor hadn't just rebranded the place, she'd buried me under paperwork. While I was in the hospital, she used the POA to refile the LLC under her name and had herself listed as the new managing member. I could argue fraud, but it would take money I didn't have, and with her PR skills and army of Instagram followers, she'd twist it into ungrateful sick sister tries to destroy successful woman entrepreneur. No, I wasn't going to fight on her battlefield. I would build my own. So I reached out to someone I never thought I'd call again, Wyatt Callahan. Wyatt was an old classmate, a general contractor who used to do high-end remodels for bars and cafes in Boston. We hadn't spoken in years. But when he picked up the phone and I told him who I was, he remembered instantly. "Rachel Moore? From Hemlock House? Are you kidding? That place was magic." I told him what happened. I didn't need to exaggerate. Just facts. Wyatt paused for a long beat and then said, "Where's the new place going?" I didn't have a lease yet. But I had an idea. 3 buildings down from Amber and Ash, there was an old florist's shop that had been vacant since 2020. The windows were covered in newspaper. The rent was high, but not unreachable. The layout was narrow but deep, with a small courtyard out back and beautiful original brick walls under the plaster. No one wanted it because the space was awkward. To me, it was perfect. I signed the lease using what was left of my emergency fund and sold a few of the rare antique books I'd hidden away in storage. It hurt, but they were just relics. This was resurrection. I didn't tell anyone, not my old baristas, not customers, not even friends. I wanted it quiet. Let Taylor bask in her fake spotlight while I sharpened knives in the dark. Over the next 3 months, I worked with Wyatt and a tiny team of trusted people to gut the space. Every tile, every shelf, every wire was deliberate. I kept the soul of Hemlock House, dark woods, intimate lighting, the faint scent of cedar and clove, but elevated it. I installed a small backroom stage for acoustic nights, added built-in bookshelves with ladders, and partnered with a local apothecary for an herbal tea line. I named it the Hollow Press. I didn't make an Instagram. I didn't post teasers. I didn't host a soft opening or invite influencers. That wasn't my audience. Instead, I went analog, handwritten flyers around town, a whispered heads up to the regulars who'd vanished after Amber and Ash opened. And the people came. Like blood returning to a heart. The first night we opened, I served coffee behind the bar myself. A couple who used to come to Hemlock House every Sunday morning walked in and froze. "Rachel," the woman said, stunned. "Welcome home," I said. They hugged me. They cried. So did I. The hollow press wasn't flashy. It wasn't clean girl aesthetic. It didn't have gold accented chairs or QR code menus or $11 smoothies. It had soul. And soul remembers its people. By month 2, I had a waiting list for our Saturday night readings. Local authors asked to do signings in my space. A well-known book reviewer featured us in a write-up titled "The Café That Feels Like a Poem." And guess who noticed? Taylor showed up one rainy Thursday in late November. I was restocking the poetry shelf when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up and saw the beige trench coat before I saw her face. She did a little double take at the shelves. At the window nooks. At the wooden bar and the antique cups. She walked up like she was stepping onto enemy territory. "This is cute," she said flatly. "Very, you." I smiled, polite but cold. "Thanks. We're booked out every Friday for the next 3 months." She made a sound like a scoff and looked around again. Her eyes lingered on the chalkboard menu, where Hemlock Blend was listed under our featured roasts. "Trying to resurrect the corpse, huh?" That hit something deep, but I didn't flinch. I said, "It's not resurrection. It's evolution." She left after 10 minutes. Didn't buy anything. Just circled the perimeter like a predator unsure if it still had top teeth. I watched her walk out with water dripping off her $400 trench coat, and I knew. She finally saw it. She felt the ground moving. A week later, I heard from one of the old Hemlock House baristas, now one of her employees. "She's freaking out," he said in a private DM, "she's cutting staff hours, started yelling at the baker because your croissants look rustic and hers look factory made. She keeps talking about reasserting dominance." I didn't respond. I just posted a flyer for our December poetry slam. Every seat sold out in 12 hours. Let her spiral. Let her burn her own house down trying to chase shadows. I wasn't chasing anything. I was building a kingdom. A quiet, bloodless kingdom. Where people smiled without posing. Where no one asked if your drink was shareable. Where the soul she threw away had taken root again, deeper this time. I didn't plan on competing with Taylor. Not at first. I truly didn't. The hollow press wasn't born out of a need to win, it was born out of survival. But it just so happened that survival looked a lot like domination when placed next door to someone who had built her brand out of curated delusion. By early January, the hollow press had become more than a coffee shop or bookstore. It had become a gravity well. People gravitated to it not just because of the coffee or the books, but because it felt real. Word spread fast, not because I paid for influencers or ads, but because people talked. Taylor hated that. I know this because I started hearing stories. From old customers. From staff who had fled Amber and Ash. From local business owners who whispered to me when Taylor wasn't around. "She's not taking it well," they'd say, lowering their voice like we were plotting a coup. "She says you're poaching her people. She said you were irrelevant. Now she's sending her assistant to spy." It was flattering. But it also meant I had to stay precise. Clean. No mess. I wouldn't give her anything she could spin into a public tantrum or some faux martyr rebrand. But Taylor? She couldn't help herself. In February, she launched Amber Nights, a weekly event that was clearly a rip-off of our Friday readings. Except hers were elevated spoken word experiences, with networking potential. That meant staged poetry over moody house beats with $16 cocktails in coupe glasses. No one from the local scene signed up. She had to import performers from a Boston PR agency. The first week she ran it, 3 regulars from my place went to check it out. One came back the next day and told me. She gave a whole speech about how imitation is the sincerest form of desperation. Then she glared at the door like she expected you to walk in. I just smiled and handed them their espresso. No need to imitate when you've got the original. Then came the articles. A small local lifestyle blog had reached out to me in December for a piece called Where Lowell Reads. I gave a short, polite interview. Nothing dramatic. Just talked about why I built the space, the role of books in community, how we kept things analog. They ran the article in mid-January, and in it the writer casually mentioned, Rachel Moore, the original founder of the now-defunct Hemlock House, has resurrected her vision in the hollow press. That one sentence lit Taylor on fire. 2 days later, she went full PR warpath. Her assistant posted a clearly coordinated blog post titled, How Amber and Ash Evolved from Chaos to Clarity, Taylor's Solo Vision. It was insane. She claimed that Hemlock House had been financially underwater, lie, that she'd rescued a sinking ship during my extended personal crisis, sickening, and that Amber and Ash was her reimagined legacy rooted in her brand intuition. People noticed the tone. It was cold, self-congratulatory, and worse, pathetic. The piece got ratioed in the comments. Someone even screenshotted an old Yelp review where I had been personally thanked for curating a disabled-friendly reading space. Still, I didn't respond. I didn't post. I didn't even tell anyone about it. Instead, I sent the blog to my lawyer. Let me tell you about Hannah Weiss. She was the quiet kind of attorney, the sort who didn't raise her voice but had a voice that made people sit down anyway. She had helped me structure the Hollow Presses LLC to be airtight. No loopholes. No vulnerabilities. After reading the article, she just said, she's desperate. You keep doing what you're doing. If she crosses into actionable territory, we'll be ready. She didn't say, if. She said, when. March rolled in colder than usual that year. Snow crusted the sidewalks. The Hollow Press ran a winter solstice series, live folk music, candlelit readings, hot buttered chai on the house for students with ID. I had to order more chairs. Meanwhile, Taylor rolled out Amber Retail, a new shop corner selling skincare, stationery, and crystal-infused wellness water. The prices were absurd. The sales? Not great. Her followers were still there, but even they were thinning out. Engagement dropped. She started pushing ads. And I kept hearing whispers. She laid off her baker. She's been screaming at her assistant in the back room. She's blaming you for everything. The tipping point came in mid-March. That Friday, we hosted a dual book signing for 2 local authors. Packed house. People spilled onto the sidewalk. Inside, there was laughter, readings, applause. And then, chaos. Taylor walked in. I didn't see her at first, but I heard the tone shift. The kind of silence that descends before something ugly. She was wearing white, of course. Hair flat ironed to perfection, lips tight, hands clutched around a $2,000 handbag like it was a weapon. I stepped out from behind the bar just in time to hear her say, loudly, "This place is AF * king joke." The room went silent. She looked around like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. You all really think this is literature? Second-rate decor and fairy lights? You think this is culture? I walked up slowly. Calm. Controlled. Taylor. You need to leave. She laughed sharply. Oh, now you get to kick me out? You're so righteous, huh? You couldn't build anything on your own, so you leached my ideas, again. That did it. From the back of the room, someone said, you stole from her while she was in a hospital bed. Another voice, you're just mad no one claps at your fake events. Taylor flushed. Rage rising. I made Amber and Ash relevant. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't blink. I just looked at her and said, you made it shallow. People don't come for relevance. They come for home. She opened her mouth to snap back, but couldn't. Something broke in her expression. For the first time, she looked small. Then she turned and left. Stormed out into the snow like a furious ghost. After she left, someone handed me a book to sign. You should write about this, they said. I smiled. Oh, I'm already living the story. It's strange how fast a person can disappear in their own hometown. After Taylor's meltdown at the Hollow Press that Friday night, something in the town's energy shifted. It wasn't immediate, no fireworks, no grand reckoning. Just quiet. A slow, spreading silence. Like the hush that settles over a forest after something large crashes through the trees. She didn't come back to the hollow press. Not that weekend, not that month. But the fallout began immediately. Saturday morning, I came in early to bake, and found 3 envelopes tucked under the front door. All anonymous. Inside each was a printed screenshot of the blog Taylor had posted, the one where she called my business chaotic and implied that I'd suffered some sort of personal breakdown. Each envelope had the same note, written in the same hand. This didn't age well. I tossed them in the recycling bin. No point in dwelling. I had scones in the oven and a full reservation sheet for our letters never sent reading that night. But the town? The town was watching. And talking. And Taylor had no idea how fast small towns turn when they smell blood. The first big crack came the following Tuesday. I was in the back helping Liza, our newest hire, who had once worked the counter at Amber and Ash, when I heard Wyatt say, Ratch? You might want to come up here. I wiped my hands and walked to the front, expecting a delivery issue. Instead, I saw Taylor's head of marketing, Jenna, standing in our doorway. She looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. Hi, she said, shifting from one foot to the other. I'm not here to cause problems. I wondered if you're hiring. Like, hypothetically. I blinked. You're still with Amber and Ash. Jenna laughed, bitter. Not anymore. She screamed at me in front of 2 vendors yesterday because I told her we didn't need gold cocktail stirrers. Then she accused me of sabotaging the aesthetic. I packed up my desk after she left to get a mani-pedi and rethink the brand. I looked her over, heels scuffed, makeup smudged, coat hanging off one shoulder. Not her usual polished self. Just tired. I nodded toward the empty seat near the register. Tell me what you're good at. No buzzwords. She exhaled, dropped her purse, and sat down. By the end of March, 4 of Taylor's former staff were working for me in various part-time or consulting roles. They didn't gossip, didn't trash talk. They just adjusted. Moved on. That's what people do when the ship is clearly sinking and the captain is trying to steer using a mirror. Meanwhile, Taylor tried everything to claw her way back. She launched a Spring Clean Your Energy workshop series, $75 per person to sit in a white room while a woman with a ring light told you to hydrate and unclog your root chakra. Attendance, 4 people. She attempted a podcast. Her intro episode included the line, "Sometimes people will hate you for being visionary." It got 7 stars on Apple and quietly vanished within 2 weeks. She dropped prices, then raised them again. Changed the logo 3 times. Switched suppliers. Cancelled all future events and replaced them with pre-recorded, mindful ambience nights. No one showed up. She tried to lean into social media again, posting heavily filtered selfies with captions like, "Rebuilding from the ashes dizzy #bossrise #Ash to Amber." One comment stood out. "You can't rise from ashes if you never burned. You just flaked." Ouch. Around mid-April, I started getting messages from property agents. Nothing official, just quiet DMs, emails with no subject lines. One read, "FYI, Amber and Ash lease up in July. Owner may be open to early exit. Interested parties inquiring." I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in buying her grave. I was building something alive. But I watched. Silently. Late April brought another shift. A city grant program, one that supported small arts-focused businesses, announced its annual recipients. Out of the 5, the Hollow Press was listed first, awarded $22,000 for community literary development and performance space expansion. That night, I got a voicemail from Taylor. She hadn't called in months. I hadn't blocked her, because frankly, she wasn't important enough to require it anymore. Her voice was tight. Flat. The way a balloon sounds right before it pops. "Congratulations, Rachel. I guess playing the small-town sympathy card pays off. Funny how you always land on your feet." Click. That was it. No hello. No goodbye. Just resentment, gift-wrapped in bitterness. The town never truly canceled Taylor. We don't really do canceling here. It's more erosion. People just stop calling. stop showing up. Invitations get lost. Connections dry out. The same yoga studio she once co-owned quietly removed her headshot. A local nonprofit she collaborated with updated their partner page, her name gone. The influencer brunches? Silent. No more tags. No more reposts. Her name stopped appearing in comments. People started using her full name in that tone. Oh, you mean Taylor Matthews, the one who ran that fancy coffee place? That's how it goes. Fame rots faster in small towns. Especially when it's made of nothing but gloss and filtered lighting. Meanwhile, I started preparing for our summer expansion. The hollow press had been offered the adjacent storefront, the old antique shop. We knocked down the wall between and built a small performance loft, a green room, and a second seating wing with vintage typewriters at every table. We called the new wing the Inkwell. By early May, the reservation list for our summer poetry series was already full. Local papers ran stories. Again. This time with headlines like, "From betrayal to bloom, how one woman rewrote her story with coffee and courage." I never asked for that narrative. But I let them run with it. I had nothing to hide. One afternoon in May, I was arranging the front display when I noticed someone standing across the street, watching. Blonde hair, black sunglasses, still in designer clothes. Taylor. She stood there for maybe 3 full minutes. Just watching people walk in and out. Watching a place she could have had a piece of, if she'd valued people over power. She never came inside. But I watched her turn, walk back down the block toward her now half-empty shell of a business, and disappear into the fading daylight. I didn't gloat. Didn't toast. Didn't post a passive-aggressive quote about rising above. I just went back to my shelves. Stacked the books. Refilled the biscotti jar. Put on the jazz record that always made the room hum like warm memory. She wanted attention. I gave her silence. She wanted legacy. I gave her an ending. Not with fire. With frost. There was no announcement. No final post. No tearful goodbye video. No, thank you for the journey message written in cursive font on a pale pink background. Amber and ash simply disappeared. It started with the windows. One morning in early June, the pale gold decals were gone. The shop stood naked, stripped of all branding. Then the chairs vanished. Then the signage. Then the hours on Google changed to temporarily closed. Within days, the storefront that once screamed curated success had become another silent, empty shell in a town full of memory. People whispered. Speculated. But no one asked. That's how small towns move. Grief is handled in nods, not questions. Taylor was gone. Here's what I know, confirmed through quiet whispers from ex-employees and the occasional barista confession. Her investor pulled out sometime in mid-May. She defaulted on her supply contract for her designer pastries. She tried to sell the brand but had no real buyer interest. And most importantly, she stopped showing up. Apparently, there was one last staff meeting where she spent most of it blaming the town, the algorithm, toxic competitors, and the public for not understanding vision. One of my part-timers, Gabe, who used to work her espresso bar before she cut his hours without notice, told me she ended the meeting by saying, "Let them have their dusty little coffee coven. I'm done with this town." And just like that, she was. She moved out of her loft apartment on the riverfront by the end of the month. Her socials went dark. Not deleted, just faded. Muted. A couple weeks later, the Amber and Ash Instagram changed its name to something cryptic and private. Last seen story, a quote that said, "The phoenix must burn to emerge." Cute. But she forgot that ashes don't rebuild themselves. The space sat empty for weeks. I passed it every day on my walk to the hollow press. I never lingered, never stared. But the silence it gave off. Heavy. The kind of silence that smells like dried glue and dust and forgotten rent. Eventually, the "for lease" sign appeared. Handwritten in the window. No temporarily closed. No spin. Just a number and a name. It should have felt triumphant. It didn't. It felt over. But here's where things got interesting. 3 days after the sign went up, I got a text from a man named Daniel Marks. Local landlord. Owned the block where Amber and Ash had lived and died. He'd inherited the buildings from his father, didn't live in town, rarely involved himself. His message was simple. Hi Rachel. Daniel Marks here. I own 319 Riverview, the space formerly occupied by Amber and Ash. I've followed your work at the Hollow Press and admire what you've built. Would you be interested in taking over the lease? Preferably to expand or create something that adds to the street's character. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say. But because this was it. The final play. The absolute checkmate. I met Daniel in person the next day. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, jeans and a flannel type. Unpretentious, soft-spoken. He didn't even mention Taylor by name, just said, the last tenant didn't quite fit the energy. We walked through the space together. It was gutted. Echoing. It looked so much smaller without the chairs and brass fixtures and fake aura. There were scuff marks on the walls, wires dangling where ring lights used to be. A faint smell of eucalyptus oil clung to the air like an embarrassed afterthought. I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I just said, I'll take it. But not for coffee. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What, then? Books, I said. Just books. And quiet. He grinned. Sold. 2 months later, the Thorn Room opened quietly. No ribbon cutting. No ads. Just word of mouth, as always. It was a literary annex to the Hollow Press. Dark walls, velvet benches, Art Deco reading lamps. No drinks, no food. Just curated books, journals, and a listening space where visitors could play old LPs on a vintage record player and read in peace. A sanctuary within a sanctuary. People who remembered Amber and Ash often blinked twice when they entered. Some said nothing. Some looked around and whispered, "This used to be," and trailed off. I never corrected them. I just nodded and said, "It's peaceful now." A few people asked if I had bought it out of spite. My answer never changed. No. I bought it out of principle. A mistake had been made in that space. I just corrected it. They always smiled at that. One morning in late August, I found a letter slipped under the Thorn Room's door. No return address. No name. Just soft, expensive stationery and slanted cursive. You won. I hope you're happy. This town never deserved me anyway. T. I read it once. Then again. And then I put it in the donation bin. Between 2 dog-eared paperbacks. I didn't need it. There's something surreal about walking the exact floors where someone tried to erase you. Where they dressed your bones in beige and glass and called it vision. Where they celebrated your absence like it was their origin story. Where they built a throne on your ashes and crowned themselves queen. And now? Now I walk across those same floors. No one bows. No one claps. They just read. And breathe. And feel safe. That's how you know the real queen isn't the one who screams the loudest or burns the brightest. She's the one who outlasts the fire. By autumn, the trees lining Riverview Street had turned gold. Leaves fell in waves, piling softly on the sidewalks outside the Hollow Press and the Thorn Room. The air smelled like cinnamon and old pages. The street pulsed not with noise, but presence. It had become something sacred. Something known. You didn't just walk into the Hollow Press anymore. You entered carefully. You lowered your voice. The town had accepted it. This was no longer a local shop. It was a pillar. A cultural artery. A place people took their friends from out of town to. A place you came to when something in you needed realignment, whether through a book, a latte, a conversation, or just a quiet corner to exist in. It was everything Hemlock House had dreamed of being. Except now, it was untouchable. Unshakable. Because the roots had been watered in pain, and the trunk had grown out of silence. People still asked questions sometimes. In their way. You're the original owner of that old place, right? Wasn't this your sister's shop or something? What happened to that other one down the street? I never corrected them. Never told the full story. I'd just tilt my head, give a polite smile, and say, things evolve. Which they do. Some businesses change names. Some sisters become strangers. Some scars become blueprints. One afternoon in late October, a girl came in with her college writing group. Maybe 19, 20. Bright eyes. Wore her ambition like armor. She walked up to the bar after the others had scattered to couches and reading nooks. "You're Rachel Moore, right?" she asked. I nodded, not looking up from the tea I was pouring. "My professor told us about you. Said we should study how you handled everything." She called it a masterclass in quiet power. That made me pause. Not because I hadn't heard that before, I had. But because of the word she used. Handled. Not fought. Not won. Just handled. Like I'd folded a chaotic story into a clean linen napkin and placed it aside. It was exactly right. After the girl left, I went into the throne room and sat in the old leather chair near the poetry shelf. I could hear the soft hiss of the vinyl player spinning Miles Davis. It was nearly empty that hour, just the hum of pages turning and someone quietly crying in the far back corner. Not sadness. Release. It happened often. We'd built a space where people let go. That, more than anything, is what separated me from Taylor. She built spaces where people performed. I built spaces where people exhaled. Around that time, a reporter from a Boston literary journal requested an interview. They were running a feature on New England's independent book havens, and the Hollow Press was one of the top picks. I hesitated. Press attention had never been my goal. But this was literary, not lifestyle. They wanted to talk about craft, not clout. So I agreed. But on one condition: no questions about Amber and Ash. No gossip. No retroactive drama. If they wanted to talk about why I chose oak shelves and yellow bulb lighting instead of LEDs and neon, fine. But the past? Sealed. The journalist was respectful. She toured the place, sat with me at the back table where the morning sun always cut just right across the books. She asked smart, thoughtful questions. At one point she paused her recorder and said quietly, "I don't know the full story. But I've heard pieces. If what I've heard is even half true, you've handled it with grace." That word again. I sipped my coffee and said, "Grace is just rage that's been filtered through patience." She raised an eyebrow, smiled, and scribbled it in her notes. The article went live 2 weeks later. It was beautiful. Thoughtful. It painted the Hollow Press as something built out of resilience and reverence for storytelling. The piece never once mentioned Taylor. Didn't need to. The photo that ran with it was taken from outside, through the glass, while I was reading at the bar. Head down. Cup near my elbow. Light in my hair. No caption. Just atmosphere. And in that image, something hit me. I looked exactly like my mother. We never talked much about her growing up, Taylor and I. She died when I was 25 and Taylor was 21. But I remembered how my mom used to work late into the night at her sewing machine, hands raw from fabric, whispering to herself about patterns and light. She never needed applause. Just the hum of a project becoming real. Taylor inherited her beauty. I inherited her devotion. And in that way, I never lost anything at all. November brought the first snowfall. It dusted the streetlights, covered the benches. Kids made snowballs in front of the press, and inside, the fireplace crackled and old holiday records played softly in the background. I stood at the register one evening, closing tabs, when Wyatt came in from the cold, brushing snow off his shoulders. He handed me a paper bag. "For you." Inside, a custom metal plate for the front entrance of the Hollow Press. It read, "EST 2022, rebuilt with quiet fire." I didn't cry. But I touched it for a long time. Wyatt just said, "You earned that line." By winter's deep center, Amber and Ash was a ghost. The landlord converted the second floor into apartments. The first floor sat empty, but not hollow. We had the story now. The memory. And stories are what matter most. Taylor's name was no longer spoken. When people mentioned her, they did so like recalling a brand that once existed, vaguely, without affection. Something that flickered, then folded. She had become a cautionary tale. The kind told over cider and candlelight. The kind of tale where the villain doesn't fall off a cliff, she slips behind the curtain and is forgotten. But me? I didn't need to be remembered. I just needed to stay. To stand in the space she tried to erase me from, and keep filling it with light. No parades. No vengeance speeches. Just steady, silent, absolute presence. Victory has a strange taste when it arrives after silence. It's not sweet. Not sharp. Not even warm. It's quiet. Familiar. Like walking into your childhood bedroom years after leaving it and finding your name still scratched under the window frame. I thought I would feel finished by now. Complete. Taylor was gone. Her business was dust. Her name barely came up anymore. The hollow press was thriving. The Thorn Room had become a retreat for every quiet soul in town. I had staff I trusted, customers who became friends, and nights filled with music, laughter, and story. And yet, I couldn't sleep. It started as a whisper. A question that wouldn't shut up inside my head. Now what? I'd spent so long rebuilding, surviving, outperforming. My grief had become architecture. My fury became strategy. I turned betrayal into blueprints. But what do you do when the war is over? When your enemy vanishes? When no one is left to fight, not even the echo of them? I found myself doing strange things. Staring too long at old journals. Running my fingers along the spines of books from the Hemlock days. Waking up at 3:17 a.m. and checking emails from years ago. Reading contracts I'd already memorized. I'd built an empire with calm precision. But my insides still felt like they were pacing a cage. Then came the letter. Not from Taylor. She was gone, fully, finally. No sightings. No posts. As if she'd never existed here. This was from my aunt, Marianne. Our mother's sister. I hadn't spoken to her in a few years. Not since Mom's funeral. She lived in Vermont, off the grid mostly, pottery, herbs, solitude. She didn't even own a cell phone. The envelope was hand-addressed, written in the same swirling script I remembered from childhood Christmas cards. Rachel. I've been hearing things from the town. About a place you've built. About a place you lost. About how you carried it all with your chin high and your mouth closed. Your mother would have been proud. But I wonder, are you proud? And I wonder, more gently, if you're tired. Sometimes, when we fight so hard to hold everything steady, we forget to grieve what we've already let go of. Come visit. You don't have to talk. Just come sit. Love. I read that letter 5 times in a row. Then I packed a bag. Vermont was quiet in a way I'd forgotten how to hear. No traffic. No screens. Just wind and birdsong and the sound of clay spinning on a wheel. Aunt Marianne didn't ask questions when I arrived. She handed me a wool blanket and a mug of something herbal and sat beside me on her porch swing. We said nothing for almost an hour. Then she asked, "Did you ever forgive her?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't know. Forgiveness is a strange thing. Everyone acts like it's a finish line, like once you cross it, you're free. But I think it's more like dust. It settles slowly. Invisibly. And you don't realize it's happened until one day you look down and see the shape of something soft where once there was only fire. I told Marianne that I didn't think I hated Taylor anymore. Not really. But I didn't miss her either. And I sure as hell didn't want her back. I just wanted to stop dreaming about her. She nodded. Then you're healing. I stayed 3 days. Didn't check my phone. Didn't answer messages. My staff at the Hollow Press held down the fort. They told customers I was away, getting my pages turned, and people laughed and left me be. On my last morning there, Marianne handed me a photograph. It was from 1997, me and Taylor, standing outside our childhood home. I was 17, awkward in oversized jeans. She was 13, all braces and braids. We were laughing. Actually laughing. She had her arm looped around my waist. My hand was on her shoulder. There was no venom in that picture. Just girls. Before competition. Before betrayal. Before business turned blood cold. Marianne said, "You can throw it away, if you want." I didn't. I put it in my bag. Back in town, fall was tipping into early winter. The hollow press welcomed me home like a warm animal, lights aglow, chairs slightly askew, candles burning low. A new note had been added to our staff board while I was gone. It read, "Rachel's rule, this place is a haven. Protect it like one." Underneath, someone had drawn a tiny sketch of a fox sleeping on an open book. I never found out who added it. But I kept it up. I still had the photograph. I slipped it into the back of the register drawer. Not to stare at. Not to pine over. Just to have. Proof that before it all broke, there was something resembling love. And maybe that mattered, even if it didn't last. Maybe surviving it didn't mean deleting it. Just understanding its shape. One night in December, I closed alone. Everyone had gone home. Snow pattered the windows like soft applause. I lit the little fireplace in the back, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in the thorn room with no book, no journal, just breath. That's when I felt it. The echo was gone. The pacing had stopped. The story had ended. Not with a scream. Not with a door slam. But with peace. There's a quiet that only winter knows. It isn't the dead quiet of vacancy, or the sharp silence of expectation, it's the soft, settled hush of enoughness. When the snow falls just right. When the wind taps but never forces the window. When your breath fogs the glass, and you see yourself not as you were, but as you've become. That's where I live now. Inside that stillness. Inside enough. It's been a full year since Amber and Ash shut down. No one's mentioned Taylor in months. Not by name. Not directly. Her story is a memory filtered through a dozen half-truths and repressed tones, a ghost with no teeth. Sometimes I hear new customers asking staff, "Wasn't there another cafe around here?" Our baristas just smile and say, "There was. But this is the hollow press." And that's all. No one explains further. No one needs to. Because legacies don't come with backstories, they come with presence. And presence is something Taylor never understood. She built noise. I built resonance. This winter, we did something new. A local high school English teacher asked if we'd be open to hosting a student open mic night, something for the kids who didn't feel comfortable on the gym floor or under the pep rally lights. We called it the Quiet Loud. The night it launched, the place was standing room only. One of the students, maybe 15, braces and trembling hands, stood up and read a poem titled Inheritance. It wasn't about money. Or fame. It was about voice. About surviving people who talk louder than you by refusing to shout. About carving space with presence, not volume. I stood behind the bar that night, arms folded, watching as she took a bow and nearly burst into tears. That's when I realized. This was the win. Not the collapse of my sister's brand. Not the reclaiming of real estate. Not the grants or the articles or the applause. This. A girl, unafraid to be soft in a world that taught her to armor up. Sometimes people ask me what the hollow press stands for. As if it needs to stand for anything at all. I usually say. It's a place where people can breathe. But if I'm honest, it's more than that. It's a scar made into shelter. A bruise turned into blueprint. A memory repurposed into monument. Every now and then, I still see the ghosts. Not actual ones, but echoes. A flicker of beige in the window across the street. A customer who vaguely resembles Taylor from the back. The sight of some overpriced cafe chain ad online with its golden hour lighting and curated latte art and recycled slogans about authenticity. And for half a second, I feel that old heat rise, that coiled wire of injustice beneath the skin. But it fades fast. Because I don't live there anymore. The truth is, I never really wanted revenge. I just wanted return. Not to the business I had before, that's gone. But to myself. To the version of Rachel who built quietly, cared deeply, and loved what she created more than she ever needed credit for. That version of me isn't buried. She's here. At the register. At the shelf. In the back room after close, drinking decaf and listening to Chet Baker while the last candle burns low. And Taylor? Wherever she is, LA, maybe, or Austin, or some coastal retreat rebranding herself as a creative strategist, I hope she finds something real. I don't wish her failure anymore. Failure taught her nothing. But stillness might. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that stillness is the final frontier. The last place you reach after the noise dies. After the ego drops. After the dust settles and the only thing left standing is your own damn spine. The plaque outside the hollow press is small. Brushed brass. Unassuming. It reads. The hollow press. Built on story. Held by silence. Made to stay. It doesn't name me. Doesn't list dates or history or drama. Because this place isn't about me anymore. It's about what I made room for. One last thing. The photograph, the one of me and Taylor, from 1997. I framed it. It hangs in the back hallway between the hollow press and the thorn room. Not for staff. Not for customers. Just for me. It's not a symbol of what was lost. It's a reminder. Even from fractured roots, things can grow clean. Not perfect. Not easy. But true. And that, my friends, is the end of it. No big twist. No flames. No grand reveal. Just a woman in a bookshop. Still standing. Still turning pages. Still choosing peace over noise. And still winning, not by being louder. But by being the one who stayed.